Good morning, everyone. Today I'm introducing Tavis Lynch from the Wisconsin Mycological Society. Tavis has over 10 years of experience teaching mushroom identification classes in northern Wisconsin. For the past year, Tavis and his colleagues have worked to create Wisconsin's first ever mushroom certification course. This course, which has been vetted by the North American Mycological Association, will fulfill the new Wisconsin Food Code requirements for retail food establishments and foragers who wish to sell wild mushrooms at retail. Today, Tavis will discuss course details and content. Okay, Tavis, I will hand it over to you now.
Has joined us. So this is Melissa. Melissa, would you like to introduce yourself? And then I'll get on with the program.
Sure. My name is Melissa. I'm a member of board of directors of Wisconsin Mycological Society, just like Tavis is. We've worked really hard on creating this content together and to try to kind of figure out what the specifics of this class is going to be. So we're really looking forward to it. And so far, Tavis is doing a great job.
All right, I just got to dig it up here. It shouldn't take more than a second. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
It's loading right now, yeah.
Wonderful. So hi, everyone. My name is Tavis Lynch. I'm an amateur mycologist for the Wisconsin Mycological Society. And this is the program that Melissa and I have created to ensure that people that are selling wild mushrooms to the public are doing it in a safe fashion. So the class itself is approximately 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours. And this is class time. This is where we're going to learn all the important details of.
This class is 3 hours?
Not today. This is just,
Not this class, but we're
this is
talking
just
about
an
the
overview.
class when we present it to people to get certified. But yes, it will be about like 5 hours total. So he'll go.
So it's approximately 3 to 3.5 hours of actual class time, including a rigorous test to follow to make sure nobody is sneaking under the radar without having all of the knowledge that they need to sell mushrooms safely. And then about an hour or so for the printing of the actual plastic license that people will have. So at the end of the day, it's going to end up being about 5 to 5.5 hours long to get through this program. The program objectives are we want people in Wisconsin to safely deliver fresh mushrooms to the public. Obviously, yeah. We're going to cover an approved species list. Melissa and I, along with the help of other board members and mushroom experts across the state, have come up with a list of mushrooms that are approved for sale in Wisconsin. We have about 300 edible species of mushrooms in Wisconsin, but not all 300 of those are going on the list due to some allergy risks and some misidentification risks. So we're going with essentially easy mushrooms that are what we would say are generally safe. And we're going to deliver this course to each student to ensure that the mushroom pickers and handlers know how to identify their mushrooms accurately, handle them, and store them safely. And the broader objective, of course, is to protect the public from foodborne illness and accidental poisoning from misidentification. It's really not as scary as it sounds. Our mushrooms in Wisconsin are quite safe in general. So the different points of the safety and handling is going to be learning the symptoms of mushroom intolerance versus mushroom allergy, and learning the differences between food poisoning and mushroom poisoning. There are differences, and we will illustrate that in the course to each of the applicants. And then, of course, cooking, serving, general cleanliness, and storage of the harvested mushrooms to ensure that they stay safe after they've been harvested. Our mushroom ID portion will look at key ID features and habitat where these mushrooms grow, and then any lookalikes that may be of concern. We're going to look at some broad genera of mushrooms where the entire genus is acceptable, Sometimes it's only one single species within a genus, and sometimes it's a species cluster or a clade or a group. And we will cover all those as we go. These are the approved species that we came up with. I think there's 10 edibles and 3 medicinals. We're going to run into some people that are going to want to continue to sell medicinal mushrooms in Wisconsin. I sell them. I know a lot of people that do. And there are some health benefits to the medicinal mushrooms. So we'll get those out of the way first. Those are the last 3 on the list: the Inonotus obliquus, the Ganoderma sugi, and the Trametes versicolor. These are mushrooms that people would sell for making teas and tinctures, and you can find them often in co-ops and health food stores and places of that nature. The general list for edible species, I'm just going to go through these briefly. We're going to have the morels, which is the entire genus Morchella. That's all acceptable. Chanterelles, same thing, the entire genus Cantharellus. And we will describe all these in great detail with comparisons to anything that may look similar. A single species in the genus Grifola, that's the maitake or the Grifola frondosa. The boletes gets a little bit more complicated, but we've got a system of sorting out everything except for boletes in the edulous clade. These are our porcinis or our penny buns, as they're occasionally called. The oyster mushrooms, we've got 6 native species and 1 naturalized species in Wisconsin. So that entire genus is acceptable. The hedgehog mushrooms, or the sweet tooths, as they're called, the sweet teeth, that's the genus Hydnum. That's an entire genus that's acceptable. Lobster mushrooms is actually a fungus on a fungus, a very popular wild edible, very easy to identify, and that's actually a mold on a species of Lactarius or Lactifluus or Russula mushroom. So these are mushrooms that have been, their acrid taste has been tamed by a hard orange mold. It's not as scary as it sounds. They're very easy to identify and very commonly consumed throughout the upper Midwest. Then we have the entire genus Hericium, lion's mane, bear's head, and comb tooth. Edibles that had to be included in this list. They're very commonly consumed and sought after. And widely used in restaurants across the state. The Matsutake, definitely the rarest on the list. It only grows in a few sandy areas in the eastern Wisconsin counties and northern Wisconsin counties. So we'll cover that one. That is a single species within the very large genus Tricholoma. Then we look at the Ichnoderma resinosum. That's a single species within the genus Ichnoderma, very common. And we included that one because we do know a fair amount of people that are using that mushroom successfully. And we think it would be a good addition to the list. That's kind of going to be, I believe, unique to Wisconsin, which is also very cool, that we can go ahead and do that. With each sale of mushrooms to a dining establishment or a grocer, there will be a statement of sale explaining everything about the harvest of that mushroom. And the purchaser should be required to keep this on hand for up to 90 days after the sale, or at least 90 days, I should say, not up to, just in case some problems arise. And maybe sometimes they take a while to surface. And if there was a series of mushroom poisonings from one establishment, we want traceability on that. We want to know if it was a location issue, or if we want to know if it was a misidentification issue. And then I suppose it's up to the Board of Health or whatever to decide if that person gets their privileges revoked. I guess we didn't really work on the punishment details for not doing this correctly. That I don't, we're not the police here on this. But this statement of sale covers the name of the seller and the contact information. That can be the certified identifier. If the certified identifier is picking the mushrooms and selling them directly to the restaurants or grocery stores, fine, then they don't need to fill in the second line. The second line being the name of the certified identifier. So if somebody else was to pick mushrooms, they need to get them signed off. Or if somebody is selling to a wholesaler, that wholesaler has to have a certified identifier, a certified forager in Wisconsin, put their name on it, that those mushrooms have been identified properly and found to be in good condition. The name of the purchaser, so we know what establishment these mushrooms are being stored at. The common names of the mushrooms being sold. So if you're selling them under the name Morel, we want to know that you're calling them Morels. And then, of course, the binomial. That's our Latin or Greek scientific name so that we have 100% species accuracy. We don't want all these colloquial and common names, regional names being tossed around and not knowing exactly what the mushroom is. So the Latin binomial is a must. The date of harvest and the date of sale. We want to know how long these mushrooms have been in storage. So typically we're looking at 7 days after the date of harvest to sell and 7 days after that date to be consumed. So we've got a total essentially of a 14-day window from harvest to consumption. And with mushrooms, refrigerated mushrooms, that it might seem like a long time. It's really not. Mushrooms are safe for quite some time in the fridge, but just to hedge our bet a little bit and err on the side of safety, we will say 14 days. So 7 after harvest and 7 after sale. Then we want the total weight of the mushrooms sold clearly displayed also, so that if the health inspector comes in and says you've got 15 pounds of mushrooms here, but it only says that you have 10 pounds of mushrooms purchased, now we've got a problem. We've got 5 pounds of mushrooms that can't be accounted for, and the entire lot should be destroyed at that point, just to avoid anything else sneaking in there that wasn't inspected by a certified identifier. So the WMS website, we're going to take care of this. We'll have to work with the DATCAP web person as well, just for a link basically from their site to ours. But we will maintain a list of the people that get certified so that a restaurant or the health inspectors can go back and check to make sure that this person is legitimately certified to identify wild mushrooms for sale in the state of Wisconsin. And then we had decided that this license to sell is good for 3 years, and the program might change over the course of 3 years, but that's one of the reasons that they should be renewed. But also just as a refresher course, it's not a lifetime license like some states have. I think they run into problems with updates and whatnot, and then no reason to find the people that had it before. They've got a lifetime license. So each person at the end of the course will get a plastic certification card with a QR code that leads to the WMS website with the current certification list of everybody that's allowed to sell mushrooms in the state of Wisconsin. And that is what we have for our program. I guess now I'm open up to questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Silence.
If we have any brave souls with any questions, you guys can feel free to come off of mute. Otherwise, feel free to just type it into the chat box.
Have you guys decided approximately how many times per year you might offer this course? Is it going to be once, or is that not decided yet?
To start with, we're going to kind of see what the demand is for the course, and I think we're going to kind of let that sort of guide us and see, exactly what people seem to want it to be.
Okay, question pops up in the chat. Is there a place we can go to see the list of approved mushrooms? That will be included on the WMS site. And they'll be
and also, we are going to have our course study guide available online as well for people before they take the course. So really pretty much everyone should read through the packet, and they'll be told that as they register, before the class. So all of the, the entire essentially course content is going to be available online.
Question for you. As an inspector going in to take a look at these mushrooms, will you have a list or image of each mushroom type? Because I'm not familiar with all the different looks of mushrooms. Is that something that inspectors would have knowledge of, a morel will look like this, or I'm not even sure some of the names you said, what their images are, so we know when we're looking at a mushroom that that's exactly what it is.
We had talked just briefly with Katie about this last month, and the discussion had come up that the entire program would be available for the health inspectors, and possibly even the health inspectors maybe should take the class. I don't know if that was an idea too, but it wouldn't hurt for the inspectors to have that knowledge too when they're going in. Otherwise, we can certainly put together something very simple besides so you don't have to read the entire course to see what the mushrooms at least look like. But we can certainly do that if that's a preferred method. We've got all the photos we need and any information that you would need to identify these mushrooms in a refrigerator or a cooler.
But I think more like on the broader scope or whatever, the point of this whole thing is to make sure that like it no matter what mushrooms are kind of on hand at someone's, whatever, if it's a restaurant or farmer's market or whatever, that like someone can answer to those mushrooms being the one, you know what I mean? So like if an inspector comes into a restaurant and says like, oh, I see you have some kind of mushroom here laying around or whatever, and they look like they're not essentially like your common portobello mushrooms that you'd, find in, or like the white button mushrooms that you'd find in a restaurant. They're, at that point, they can kind of assume that they might be wild mushrooms, and then they can just ask for the certification, the sale form that, should accompany those mushrooms. And that's kind of like essentially broad stroke speaking, the sort of like standard operating procedure that they'd probably do for that situation.
Yeah, and I do think that the inspector should know what they're looking at. So the options there are there's a couple of options there. One is, yes, take the course yourselves, or Melissa and I can put together a quick guide for everyone to glance over and see what these mushrooms look like. Most of them on this list are very distinct. You're not gonna confuse one for another for the most part. There's a couple look-alike issues, but not anything serious. Definitely you'd be able to, with a quick study guide or whatever, a quick reference, you could look and say, oh, these are chanterelles. Okay. Now you know what they are. You're not going to say, I don't know what those are. But you'd have an idea of what they are, what they're supposed to be. So that is, yeah, and I'm seeing some come up in the chat here too. So I guess that's something that's open for discussion, and I'm cool with whatever way we want to do it. Yeah, 90 days on the storage of the keeping of the records of sale, the statement of sale. And we'll give people a copy of that, and then we'll email them, a file that they can print their own. But it has to happen with every sale. If you sell mushrooms today, 5 pounds, go back to the same establishment tomorrow and sell them another 5 pounds, that's 2 separate sales. Those have to be kept separately so that we know exactly what day those mushrooms were sold. We don't want people hoarding mushrooms, getting another load a week later and just throwing all their mushrooms together. Now those mushrooms are in their past 7 days. And that's another issue where we want to know the exact volume sold, the exact weight, sold at every transaction. So we know how many mushrooms are going in and how many mushrooms are coming out, so that nobody's sneaking under the radar. So a bill of sale or a statement of sale every time a mushroom is sold to a grocer or a restaurant.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I guess I just kind of have a general statement. I'm from Marathon County. I have a handful of fancier restaurants. At every inspection, I ask if they're buying wild mushrooms. It's always no. And I think for the most part, restaurant owners are fearful to buy wild mushrooms, even if an individual selling to them is certified. So I guess I have more of a general statement in that you know, if we want to support people who are foraging for wild mushrooms, I think restaurant owners need some education.
That's something we discussed also, is requiring the restaurants that are buying them to also take the course. We didn't really decide officially if that was going to be part of it, but is what these restaurant owners have is American mycophobia. People in America are afraid of mushrooms, and it's really an unjustified fear. The mushrooms, especially in the upper Midwest, are extremely safe. I mean, we do have poisonous mushrooms like they do everywhere, but we have very few. And everybody thinks that these mushrooms out in their front yard, if they touch them, they're going to get sick and all this. And none of that's true. For the most part, 90+% of the mushrooms that we have here are safe to consume. They might not taste good, but they're safe. So yeah, that's maybe some education of the restaurant owners too is something that we want to add to that. Maybe the buyer has to have the same program. I guess that's up to the Department of Agriculture to
that's something
decide.
that we as a group discussed a lot. And we kind of figured that, I mean, it would increase the demand for the class a lot if we're going to have, every single restaurant that wants to essentially like sell morels. Like you can't get really a morel that's not, unless it's like Chinese or whatever, that's not like from the wild really, if it's like fresh and local. So, we can definitely talk further about that. And if you guys, want to put that in place, we could, but it's gonna definitely open a much broader box as far as like how many people probably need to take the class.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's something that maybe we should discuss.
Yeah, and I think as of now, the way that our food code reads is that we just require that people are obtaining things from an approved source. So yeah, that would definitely have to be something that DADCAP would need to look further into if we're going to be putting any more strict rules onto the operators.
Sure. And if it's something that you don't require in other fields, it would kind of be silly to add that one. So I can see the point there for sure. So I guess to answer Seth's question there, I mean, his statement, I guess, yeah, they're afraid, but it's kind of unjustified. So I think maybe as they start seeing that the restaurants that are using these wild mushrooms, people seek these out. There's definitely restaurant goers that they see wild mushrooms on the menu and they get fired up for it. They will order it just for the mushrooms, no matter what the dish is. So maybe that's if they don't want to, I guess they're just missing out on business essentially. Might be a way to look at it as well.
All right, do we have any other questions?
Katie asked how much it would cost, and we've done like a comparative analysis of other clubs and what they're charging for their certification classes. And right now we're thinking probably between like $100 and $175 for the cost.
Yeah, we've got some pretty fair expenses on our end going along with it. We're purchasing a large printer to print the cards, and then of course the rental of the venue and mileage and travel and everything. So we've got some discussion on our end to figure out, to nail down an exact price. And a lot of that's going to depend kind of on what the demand is going to appear to be. If only 10 people want it in the whole state, which it won't be 10, it's going to be hundreds of people will want this. But we kind of got to get online options for the course. We haven't discussed that yet. Yeah, that's something that we'll probably talk about as we book a venue and pick a date when to do this.
We did actually like discuss it as a group for, I don't know, I think actually Tavis, you were gone during that meeting. But essentially, I don't think there's going to be an online option. And the reason for that is like essentially if you put a test online, then someone can sort of reference their course materials as, you know, sort of like a cheat sheet in order to like pass the test. And I feel like WMS feels pretty strongly that anyone who actually gets certified in this program should be able to pass the test in person without having a cheat sheet. They should be able to know these mushrooms inside and out. So doing an online test is probably not in the cards for this, unfortunately.
Yeah, in the other states, I've got other certificates and it was always in person. You know, that probably just for that reason. You had to go there. The MAMI, the Michigan area one, yeah, you have to drive to wherever they're having it in Michigan to ensure that you are in person and not sneaking under the radar and getting a license and potentially selling, you know, spoiled mushrooms or misidentified mushrooms to the public. We don't want that. That's what we're trying to prevent with this whole thing. So yeah, I guess I must not have been there for that meeting, but I agree with Melissa. In person is required.
And the rust estimate for the first class date, we're thinking fall. So I guess I would say I'm hoping October.
Yeah, October, November is kind of what our calendars will allow. Melissa and I are both very busy with mushroom stuff from now until the 1st of October.
And just a little plug, keep in mind that our WEHA conference is also in October. So if you have not registered for that, please do so. It will be in Lake Geneva this year. So it's a beautiful area. I'm sure October, it's going to be just gorgeous there. And it looks like we have one more question coming in.
Yeah, Amber asked if this course is the same as wild mushroom retailers hold. Well, anyone who is going to be a wild mushroom retailer is going to have to take this class to prove that they can hold their own with their identification. But if like a wild mushroom retailer is giving classes, essentially what they're probably doing is just giving like a beginning mushroom identification class. This is going to be quite a bit more rigorous and quite a bit more in depth than just like a beginning mushroom identification class. It's going to be a class that's going to be a little bit hard to pass.
It's a hard class. Anybody that takes this class, they're all on the same plane. Then they're going to learn something for sure. This isn't just going to be, you know, the guy that's been foraging for 20 years is not just going to be able to walk in and walk through this test. You know, he's going to have to know, or she is going to have to know exactly every part of it with 100% accuracy. You know, we don't want any errors. So yeah, does a retail, well, the forager kind of is the wholesaler and in some cases the retailer. So it'd be the same. You know, if a guy who owns a grocery store wants to sell wild mushrooms that he picked, he absolutely has to take this program. You know, because he's now the certified identifier. You know, so whoever identified or harvested the mushrooms, they have to take this program and be able to sign off that those mushrooms are what they say they are, and that they're in good health. You know, no decay, no bug damage, no bacterial colonization. We teach them how to recognize all these things.
Well, thank you guys. It sounds like it's going to be a very exciting class and something that I know inspectors just haven't had enough of. So I think this is kind of opening our eyes a little bit more. So thank you. We appreciate you guys both coming here to talk to us today. And I do have on the original announcement, we do have Tavis's email on there. So if you have any further questions, you could always reach out to him as well.
Certainly.
Thank you guys
for having
so much.
us.
Thank you guys.
very
That was
much.
awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. We'll see you guys next month in August. we're doing a mini series starting in August. So DHS is going to do a little forum for us of different things, different case studies. So that will be in August and September. So
Cool.
don't forget to register for that one. I'll be sending out the invite within the next few weeks here.
Thanks.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Lily.
Bye.